Welcome to Happily Ever Aftermath.
The podcast where we discuss relationships in movies and our relationships with them.
I'm Polina Grunbaum.
And I'm Diana Rojek-Sconard.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about 1985's Room with a View, a movie that I admittedly really loved when I was 14 or 15 when I saw it. And how about you? How did you like it?
I was not 14 when I saw this for the first time.
No.
I was definitely older. Polina's pick. I had actually never heard of this movie before you had suggested it. Kind of interesting because many Oscar nominations, a couple of wins here and there. Mm-hmm. I recognize a lot of the people. It's Helena Bonham Carter and Dame Maggie Smith and Dame Judi Dench and
Julian Sands. There's Daniel Day-Lewis.
Dame Daniel Day-Lewis is there as well.
He's very Damish in this particular movie.
There's a lot of very prominent actors and actresses, and I was surprised that I'd never heard of it before. But then again, it's 1985. I was very young when it first came out, but I've seen The Godfather before. I'm not going to use that as an excuse.
Well, I think it's it's the number 73 best British film of all time.
Best British film.
Yes, so
British.
Also, I have a feeling, I kind of agree with you. I think this is one of those films that at the time, and you got to be really into costume dramas to, start going down that Merchant Ivory.
Oh, yeah. And it's
black hole.
And it is literally a Merchant Ivory movie, not just one of those Merchant Ivory movies where it's in England.
Yeah, it's actually the Merchant Ivory. I think this is the movie most associated with them.
Well, when the name Merchant Ivory was on there, I'm like,
now I know what to expect.
That's real and not just something I'm going to make up as I go along.
God, not one of those Merchant Ivory movies.
No.
So I'll read the synopsis and we'll get right in there. In this British drama based on the novel by E.M. Forster, Lucy Honeychurch, played by Helena Bonham Carter, a young English woman, is touring Italy with her older cousin, Maggie Smith. I thought it was her aunt, but I don't know.
They made it seem that way, but there's always a...
Who knows?
Well, the synopsis does.
I don't know. I do not trust them. I think it was her aunt, but regardless.
Okay.
At a hotel, it really doesn't matter. An older member of the family, which makes sense because she's kind of insufferable. At a hotel in Florence, Lucy meets the charming and free-spirited George Emerson, played by a very, very attractive Julian Sands. Although inspired by George, once she's back in England, Lucy ponders settling down with a wealthy and staid Cecil Weiss. When George reappears in her life, Lucy must decide between him and Cecil. I think this movie to me, when I saw this originally, it was a romantic. The romance of it was what was the magic of it.
Right.
But having seen this again, I think what makes this a really, really fun movie. For me, I really enjoy it. I mean, of course, it's gorgeous and it is really romantic. It takes place in Florence. It takes place in the English countryside. Takes place a bit in Rome. Like, it's beautiful. The costumes are gorgeous. It's set in Edwardian England and Italy, obviously. But it's just like it's a very clever social commentary, and kind of overlaid with this like sort of sweeping romantic story.
So we had talked about that a little bit beforehand,
yeah.
and I will want to get onto that, but tell me, how did this affect you when you were younger?
So, it's funny, when I think back on this movie, the thing I remember was the kiss, that first kiss.
Okay.
Like, to me, this kiss that was, the movie kiss that, at this point.
Set the visual stage for this.
Okay. So there is...
Pretend you're Judi Dench.
That's true. So Judi Dench plays this novelist that's staying in this... They're staying in this pension in Florence, and they are, but of course they're surrounded by the English. And they're on a grand tour. This is like Lucy's kind of grand tour of Europe, and they end up in the countryside, and she looks being just bored by the conversation of adults. She ends up running into the Julian Sands character George in this field. Like, he's standing there kind of staring into the forest, and he's in this field of like it's
a field of
barley and poppies.
Yes, the details are very important there.
And you've got to remember, this is a time that where it's not like now, obviously. There's
we don't have barley here.
We don't have barley.
No.
But like sort of social manners are very, very important. And but we're kind of moving out of the kind of corseted manners of the Victorian era. And she basically runs across him in this field of barley, and she's wearing this beautiful white dress. It's lace, and she walks up to him, and he runs toward her, and just without a word, just picks, like, kind of embraces her, and they have this really, really passionate kiss. And then her aunt or cousin, Maggie Smith,
her character Charlotte,
yes, runs into who is very concerned with propriety. Basically sees them, and is like, yells her name to get her to stop engaging in this this passionate act with a man, and so she does.
Yeah.
And then this kind of the crazy part of the plot, which is basically that Lucy and her aunt or cousin Charlotte end up saying, we will never speak of this anywhere. And later on in the movie, we get, basically it turns out that she told the novelist played by Judi Dench, who is a kind of a florid romance, sort of Arlequin romance type figure, that it turns out that Charlotte actually told this writer, and she kind of put this in a book,
right? And as it was
to listen to it,
and as they were having the Charlotte, Maggie Smith, and Helena Bonham Carter's character Lucy, as they were making that promise to each other, oh, don't tell your mother, oh yeah, and yeah, I won't speak of it if you won't speak with it. Of course, we all knew when that promise was made, it was going to be completely honored, and it was not going to come back to haunt them in any way, shape, or... Oh wait, you just spoiled that she told Judi Dench. Never mind.
Well, it's hard to talk about this in sequence.
Well, but yeah. No, well, no. As I was watching, I'm just thinking, yes, and that's not going to...
That's never going to happen.
Of course, that's not going to come back to haunt them later. Absolutely.
No, because they talk about...
That would be the fantastic movie right there.
Yeah.
And it never happened.
Never does. And then she marries Cecil.
The end.
Half the movie. It'd be half as long. That would be great.
Okay, so they made this promise to one another. So tell me, you said that it was one of the first things, the kiss. You set the stage. So when you were younger, just what happened? Just what was firing in your brain?
Well, I think one, of course. I mean, now watching it again, it's very clear. Like, I mean, the movie is basically about. It's about society's like all people, it's about society's expectations versus kind of a sense of versus your own personal passions. And I think, at that age, as you're a kid, you're allowed to do whatever you want. You can follow your passions. I mean, you have to, do your homework and do all that. But it's kind of around this time that people start looking at you and expecting sort of signs of adulthood and sort of a responsibility from you. And I think that, like, to me, this movie, the romance of like, first off, Julian Sands, I have to say, is absolutely gorgeous in this movie. He's so ridiculously attractive.
He's a good-looking guy, but because I didn't know who he really was actor-wise, I'm just like, okay, good-looking guy. I need more context around him because I had context with all the other actors.
Yeah.
You know, Maggie Smith. That's the well, she's Maggie Smith, but you know, from teenage version of me, I'm just like, yeah, that's the angry nun from Sister Act.
God, I do not even remember her in Sister Act.
Well, of course not, because she was wearing, you couldn't see her hair, you could only see
Oh,
like her
she was
nose.
wearing a wimple.
Yeah, so there's that, and then you got Helena Bonham.
Wimple? Is it a wimple? I think it's a wimple.
Not a habit.
Habit. Okay, let's just go with habit.
Well, that's the whole outfit itself, but not the point. I'm watching young Helena Bonham Carter, and I'm thinking she plays so many outlandish characters. It's very strange to see her very subdued, and I felt very much like it was reminiscent of Emma Watson as she was getting through the middle Harry Potters, which, ironically enough, Helena Bonham Carter tries to kill her in those movies.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, so I'm used to, I just escaped from an insane asylum, and I'm going to use my witch powers to kill this person, Helena Bonham Carter. You know,
see, yeah,
Planet of the Apes, Helena Bonham Carter,
Bonham.
not subdued. I want to pursue my passions, and how dare this stiff, nun try to keep me from my passions.
It's funny because I was thinking about that with Helena Bonham Carter because, of course, at the time, like, Helena Bonham Carter was considered this kind of serious actress.
Well, she still is. It's just that she's managed to...
But she's like a wacky person. I mean, just like when you follow the way she dresses, the things she says, she's like a wacky... She's become a wacky... She's become an eccentric human being.
Well,
then she was just kind of a star. But it's funny that you're like, you wanted context from actors.
Well, it's not even... It's kind of tough. Okay, so just from a blank slate, Julian Sands, that's his name. Again, good-looking guy, absolutely. But because I have no context of him, I'm just like, okay, he's a character. I need to know more about him. Everyone else has a story just from their previous performances. For example, the gentleman who plays his father, Denholm Elliott.
Yeah.
I love him a lot because he was in Trading Places as the butler of Dan Aykroyd, and then subsequently Eddie Murphy. So I'm watching him. I'm used to him being British and very, I'm not even sure how to put it, just proper.
Yeah.
So the fact that he's kind of just...
He's the crazy, he's the kind of...
He's
the free spirit of the film.
He's free-spirited, absolutely. I mean, it's not so bad. It's just, I'm used to him that, and then also from the Indiana Jones movies. I love Last Crusade. So as I was, watching the movie,
oh my God, I totally forgot all these movies.
Ryan comes in, makes a comment about how he got lost in his own museum once, and I'm just like, ruining the romance. But seriously, that was funny. Anyways,
that is really good.
Yeah. So it's just, again, I have context around these actors, so to see them in a different environment, I have to restabilize myself. So, and what didn't help is that the character that plays, the actor that plays Lucy's younger brother, his name is Freddie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched American Horror Story.
No.
Okay, so there's a character in the Freak Show season, I believe that's number 4, and he's just like a younger son, but he does what he wants and all this other stuff, and for some reason, mother screaming Freddie to him the whole time, calm down, Freddie, we're doing this and we're doing that, but he just wants to do what he wants to do. I couldn't get that out of my head. So I'm just thinking of him the whole time. But I looked him up eventually. This guy, he actually is in the new, he's in Sherlock, the series. He plays, I love that actor in Sherlock. And I'm just like, oh.
Wait, doesn't he plays Sherlock's brother?
No, he doesn't. No, not his brother. He plays not constable, but he plays the detective that...
oh my God.
Who's not always crapping on him, but he is crapping on him, but later comes to respect him because, let's face it, he's awesome. So I'm watching here and I'm just like, I can't see it, but I can totally see it. But I get very easily distracted when it comes to the younger stuff. Like if I were to watch Empire Strikes Back, I would be looking for a young Cliff Clavin, John Ratzenberger, anywhere in there. I know he's in there. I got to find him. But okay, actors distracting me aside, I'm watching this for the first time, and I enjoyed it. It was very good. I mean, it has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so that really plays with expectations.
Yeah.
So I
sold it too.
Well, again, I have to stabilize myself. I have to calm myself down, and it doesn't help that just the night before we went to go see Wonder Woman, and I'm just like, yeah, Wonder Woman, and it was a really good movie, and it's just like my synapses are firing and awesome, and like, all right, let's watch this movie now. To Merchant Ivory, okay.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of deep breathing. You have to count to 10 and get back into a space of calm.
Wow, they just said a room with a view in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Okay, all right, yes. Oh, okay.
God, they're really upset about this room not having a view.
Yeah, that they're still talking about the room not having a view. Huh. When do we get a glowing lasso of love in this movie?
Will there be more action? Will there at least be horseback? And there was no one even on horseback, really.
No, there's more.
There's buggies. There's a lot of buggies.
Yeah.
Carriages.
It seems like the whole movie was in cool slow motion, but it's not like there were any bows and arrows flying. It was slow motion love. So
you didn't. The heat coming off of the two of Lucy and George wasn't. Didn't carry you through. It just, you needed a lasso of love. We could re-edit this movie.
No,
and try to add some lassos.
No. After about 45 minutes of again reorienting myself to the pacing of the movie, I finally got further into it. I'm just like, oh, okay. So here it is. She's young. She's expected to marry well. That's good to know. That's good to understand. I guess I just didn't have a good concept of they're on a tour of Italy. Why was she going? Just to see the world?
Yeah, it's like kind of what you do. That's how I took it. It was kind of a grand tour sort of concept. That It's like the thing you do after you finishing school, whatever. And actually, it's funny. For me, I completely actually forgot about the whole Cecil thing. But it is... Unlike, we're talking about Jane Austen. Like, unlike Jane Austen, or unlike Pride and Prejudice, there is there's no stakes in her marrying Cecil.
Okay.
Like, this is the thing that kind of bothered me about it.
Okay.
Is there were no stakes in her marrying Cecil. There was only like, oh, and you do not understand at all what she sees him, because he is literally insufferable in every scene.
I didn't think he was that bad.
Really?
In the beginning, I just thought like, oh, he's just kind of... Okay, fine. He was kind of stiff, but that's a whole I'm still trying to get to know him scenario. And thank you so much for saying there was no stakes, because when it was happening, I'm thinking like, are they gonna lose everything, or do they have no money? Is this like a big scenario where she needs to marry? Because again, the whole Jane Austen thing, there were higher stakes involved. Granted, they were down the road stakes of we need to marry because otherwise no money will pass to. Well, that there is a son. Clearly, they're very comfortable and they're spending money.
Yeah. But she just goes off to Greece.
She goes off.
She doesn't even wait for like super saver fares. I mean, really, like.
Well, and like she did kind of cry when she's just like, it's already been purchased. And like, it's non-transferable. No,
I know. I had that moment too.
Yeah.
I was like, that would be a really awkward conversation to have with your mom. But let's go back.
I'm backing up a few steps. Like, but no, thank you. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, because when they get engaged, she doesn't really seem to have an affection for, is it Cecil or Cecil? For Daniel Day-Lewis.
I think they call him Cecil. Yes,
for slick-haired mustache guy, and it just yes, I'm going to marry him, because it was so abrupt. She leaves. Yes. Okay, so here's what's happening. It's not just this grand passionate kiss between George and Lucy. No, there is. I was shocked by this. They're in Italy. Lucy is wandering about by herself. There's this fight between two people, and then all of a sudden I see blood, and all of a sudden I see there's like a fight of some kind. Did somebody get stabbed?
Yeah, they got stabbed and died.
I saw a knife.
She's in a square, and I think she's in... God, where was she? Was in the Church of
don't
Saint
ask me.
Crochet?
I know.
Yeah, so right outside of that.
Pretty Italy place.
Beautiful, like little square, and she's, just walking along, and you see, and it's like, there's this lovely scene where she's just walking through the square alone, And you can see that this is kind of almost her first sort of chance of, this is her first sort of vision of freedom. That's how I took it. It's like she can wander as she pleases,
Sure.
see whatever she likes. She's in a new place, and suddenly she buys a packet of photographs, like postcards, I'm assuming, and like, and then suddenly this, like, out of nowhere, this fight breaks out.
Sure.
It just looks like a normal fight. It's going to be okay. And I had the same reaction where there was blood, and you're kind of, you're shocked to see this. It's really like a very brutally photographed. Like, I didn't remember this at all.
Well, I on behalf of a quarter of my heritage, you know, we Italians are very passionate people.
Apparently.
So passionate that we don't even know what we're stabbing each other about.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. It's never clear what they're fighting about because they're doing Italian. And I don't speak Italian.
And my subtitles weren't on.
My subtitles were on, and they said talking from Amazon. Thank you, Amazon. Talking.
Don't give them a free plug.
It's true. Sorry,
because they need our plugs.
Yeah, they're really struggling.
Was it? Let me guess. Arguing in Italian and
arguing in Italian in parentheses.
Yeah,
just because I was kind of in a lot of places, and I missed something. But the thing is, it's really like, I mean, this is actually realized this, you know, isn't just a costume drama. Like at one point, the guy, like, his eyes roll back in his head. They're still open, and there's blood like pouring out of his mouth.
It's pretty jarring. It was
very
upsetting.
jarring.
And I know this is getting all of you just set up in this great romantic mood, but she swoons. And by swoons, I mean she passes out.
Well, he sees, because he actually walks into the square too.
George is there.
George is there.
He. Yeah. The guy who was stabbed, he was there.
Yeah, the guy who was stabbed was there. And then you see basically this whole scene kind of unfurling where suddenly these undertakers come in with like these masks, and everyone tries to get the guy who's dying into like into the fountain to like try to get some water on him. Like that was gonna help. That was the other thing that kind of took me out. I was like, if he was stabbed, I don't think pouring water on him is gonna really, you know, on his face is gonna do it. They didn't like try to like knock him back to life by, you know, trying to shock him. They just like very gently were pouring water on him. Well, and then George sees her, and just as she's about to fall down, he like catches her and carries her off.
Yes, and that's oh wow.
And that was very romantic and swoony. And you're like, damn corsets, they ruin everything.
Well, I'd also like to think the corset probably cut off the circulation for what she was going through. But
like she probably started breathing really heavily and then couldn't, you know, take a breath.
And I guess I'm a purist. I want my swooning to come from not witnessing a stabbing in a foreign land.
Oh, see, I liked that. I thought that's actually what made, because the whole movie is about this like break of, I mean, there's the whole tradition of like the English going to these, you know, places with these kind of wild, passionate people, like the other, you know, and they even, you know, she actually talks like later on, you know, she actually, when she kind of comes to, she's really embarrassed. She wants to get out of this situation as soon as possible. And but
he tells her to go, you know, just lie here. She dropped her photographs. He went to go get them, and then when he goes, she runs off. And I'm just thinking, what are you doing?
Well, she did on purpose. She's like, why don't you go get my photographs so she could run off?
Yeah, but still, what are you doing? You're all like half passed out.
I know, exactly. And then he's like, no. And he manages to be bossy and yet kind and gentle at the same time. Anyway, so then they're having this whole conversation where she's basically like, her entire goal of this conversation is to be like, do not tell anyone I fainted because it's embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing.
And also, it is her first time being out. Like, she should be able to handle it.
Oh.
It's her first time being free. She should be able to handle it without passing out.
Well, I'm sure if there wasn't a stabbing, she would.
If there wasn't a murder, she would have been fine. Yeah. I mean, that's bad luck there. I mean, that's
witnessing a murder.
Yeah, like your first time, just basically wandering around by yourself, and you walk into a murder.
Well, that's bad luck in general.
Yeah.
I don't think that's like, you know,
just bad luck for her.
No, that's not like superstition. You walk under a ladder, that's bad luck. You know, I think just you witness a murder, that's bad luck. That's bad luck.
And it's funny because she's just like, she tries to pretend that it's like not a big deal, as if she's like in a foreign country when witnessing like violent stabbings constantly.
Is this when in Rome? do as the Romans.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Be totally cool with witnessing a murder.
Yeah, be in Venice when in Venice.
When in Venice.
Yeah, just the stabbing is fine.
Where Caesar, I should go stab him.
Yeah. Oh, nice one.
Oh, thank you.
Anyway, so she goes, and he actually is like, oh my, he said something extraordinary has happened to me, because until then his father actually approaches Lucy and basically is like my son broods for no apparent reason, like he kind of thinks the world is this dark place and he should embrace the world instead. Like they have that conversation in the drawing room.
Oh wait, so you're saying his son,
like George.
Well, when you said he should embrace the world, you think his father should embrace?
No, his father said to Lucy that please fix my son.
No, that I got. You were saying he should embrace it. Are you saying George thinks the world is a dark place and as such he should embrace it, or his father thinks that even though the world is a dark place, he wants George to embrace it?
Yeah, or basically realize that there are other things in the world, not just darkness.
Okay.
And it's funny because Lucy tries to be really like sophisticated and cosmopolitan. She's like, it's interesting how the Italians are so charming and lively. I forget the exact word.
Quarter of me was insulted.
And yet so violent.
Yep, insulted.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I'm like, whoa. But that's also what made it. I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, yes, people the world over are violent. And it's that whole thing about the other, you know? It's almost like she's looking at them as an experiment, because they never really interact with Italians in this whole movie. It's great.
It's somebody interacting with them on behalf of them. There's a scene where they're riding in the carriage and you've got the carriage, the driver making out with his quote unquote sister.
And the vicar.
Yeah. It's just like,
Reverend, I forget.
I'm sorry, I don't want to be stuffy, but I'm with the Reverend on this one. You're on the clock. I don't think you should be trying to alienate your customer base with kind of half groping and then claiming it's your sister.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. That was a little weird. And then
not his sister.
And then their solution is basically to let her out and then walk back by herself to the town.
Yeah. Well, the sister.
The sister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'm understanding the landscapes and the romantic setting. So you've got Lucy and George, and there's this connection. After she faints and then gets better, he retrieves the photos. And then, see, I didn't process this immediately, so I'm really glad that there was enough dialogue to fill in the blanks there. He's about to hand her their postcards.
And then he realizes they're covered in blood.
No, he just throws them into the water. I'm just like, what? It's kind of an ass move, man. What are you doing? He's just like, I'm so sorry, they were covered in blood. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I thought he was just like, here's your photographs. Nope, just kidding.
Well, yeah, because he picks them up and he like in the square and he looks at them and he's like, oh, yeah, I don't know if this is like the right thing to do right now, because she's just fainted, and seeing like these photographs she purchased covered in blood is just going to remind her of this. But her whole thing is that he's basically like, this is extraordinary. Like something extraordinary has happened to me. And she's like, nope, nothing to see here. Nothing extraordinary has happened. Nothing at all. Nope. I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, was he trying to go like, this is something big. It's perfectly fine that you just passed out and she's...
No, I think he fell in love.
Oh, wait, no, back up a step. No, my question was not the extraordinary thing. I'm just like, okay, they just witnessed a murder.
Yes. I
think his thing was trying to comfort her in that she's trying to be like, no, I'm perfectly fine. I'm perfectly comfortable. I didn't faint. This is totally embarrassing. I witnessed a murder, but this is perfectly fine. I thought he was trying to come back with no, this is a large thing, but it's okay. Allow yourself to feel this because this is something larger, but she just wants to go back to being prim and proper as if the world is normal.
Huh. I interpreted it totally differently. I thought, because he was saying something extraordinary has happened to me.
Okay.
Like I have changed. He actually says, like, something extraordinary has happened to me. Like, I have been changed.
In that exact moment?
In that, when she's kind of calmed down and they're sitting there.
Okay.
And I thought for him, it was that suddenly the world has sort of expanded. And
how did you take that? He took care of her, and therefore this particular instance together has made him...
I think it's more that there's this sort of he's been in this headspace. He's been in his head. He's been brooding. He's been, his father described him as being brooding. He ends up arranging all of his food. He starts making all these question marks everywhere.
Yeah.
Like he arranges his food in the form of a question mark at dinner.
Yeah, like he's the Riddler.
Yeah, like he's the Riddler. He takes a painting in his room, which we'll get to the whole room with a view thing in a minute. But it takes a painting in his room, turns it over, and writes a question mark.
Yeah.
And suddenly, in the explode, because it doesn't look like he actually saw the stabbing. It looks like he only witnessed the aftermath, but I don't really know.
Okay. Well, I thought he also followed them over there and saw them trying to revive the guy. So he didn't see the stabbing itself, but he saw
like that
what
there
was
was
happening.
blood.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So if I may,
Yeah.
I'm listening to what you're saying, something has happened to me. My interpretation of that is in this event that happened, all of this is happening. He is surrounded in the darkness. And if anything, being surrounded in the darkness, this is just one more thing that happens. But the fact that he is drawn to her, that he goes to catch her, that he is caring for her, instead he is more focused on not just this is just another piece of the day, but instead it's about caring for her. Is that the moment where he's, this is an extraordinary thing that's happened to me, because he's able to care not just for
Himself.
well, he cares for his father too, but the fact that even though this is just another one of the things, but he cares. And it's not just figuring it out, but instead it's about alleviating the suffering that those can experience.
I also wonder if it's a moment where he goes out of his head and into his body. I mean, the way they portray this fight is this incredibly animalistic thing. They show the blood, they show the body, they show the guy's tongue, his eyes. It's this very, it's this very, it's a corseted society, right? And it's like, here are these people like acting in this incredibly animalistic way, and then out of rage, out of physical blind rage. And then you have the kind of physicality of someone, of carrying, like physically carrying her and catching her and holding her body in his arms, attending to like this, there's blood, there isn't just the mind, this kind of place in his head that he's been trapped, and these small rooms filled with objects. He's out in the world, and suddenly the answer to those questions has come. He's in this incredible sort of moment of violence. Something has happened that's opened up in him, and I think one of the things that's opened up is a realization, that anything can happen at any moment. Just somebody just got murdered in front of me, and I am falling in love.
So now that we established that there was a brutal killing, we
will speak of the brutal killing no more.
No, I'm going to keep talking about it.
God, it was really brutal. Like, seriously, that I do not remember. Watching that was like the big rediscovery.
I'm gonna ask you a question about a later rediscovery, but okay, so they have fallen in love. He has had an awakening. She goes back to where she's from. She goes back to see her, she's living with her mother, her brother. And in this quick time, Italy is over. They've gone back home. She's, bam, engaged to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, she accepts him. And it's actually in the novel, she in the Ian Forster novel, she actually, I think he rejects him 3 times.
Wow.
This is the 3rd time that he's asked. And because they meet up in Rome, actually.
Oh, okay.
He's an effete. Like, he is
what
Cecil.
Does that mean?
Cecil is like, he's into art. Okay. He's into beauty. He talks like at some point when someone accuses him of being insufferable, he says, "Oh, it's just." Lucy tries to justify his behavior by saying, "Oh, he just gets very upset at ugly things," because he basically like snaps at her brother, and she's like, "Oh, she gets very upset at ugly things," as if like that's a really good excuse. Like having everything be beautiful all the time is really not, it's not an interesting life goal.
Well,
I mean, it would be great because I love beautiful things.
Well, sure, but eventually you get to the point where even the beautiful things are considered ugly because by comparison, these other beautiful things are more beautiful. Yeah. So okay, there's not a clear-cut villain. He's not an evil person.
He's neither
super
a dentist nor a podiatrist,
Well,
which we've discussed is the usual trope, that you're either a dentist or a podiatrist, and that's a shorthand for, much like in Only You, or When in Rome, or whatever it was.
He's got a little bit more. At least in those characters, they were boring.
Yeah.
Or they were just not true love.
He's just insufferable.
I didn't think he was that insufferable.
You didn't find him insufferable?
Well, because I'm in this day and age, I realize this is a period piece, but in this day and time, it's called being picky. I am picky.
Oh, so basically,
I'm specific.
So
I am detail
So the character
oriented.
that you put yourself in is Cecil.
I want to be.
Well, he has actually a great number of quotes. I mean, I haven't read this novel probably since about the time I saw the movie, but
I also don't like playing tennis.
I do not enjoy playing tennis. I'm horrible at it. I have terrible hand-eye coordination, and I was traumatized by it as a child. So yes, I do. If I too would make the same as, you're right. Maybe I'm more Cecil. Oh my God, I'm more Cecil than Lucy or George. I thought of myself as a George, but I'm actually a Cecil.
I'm definitely dark and broody, but I happen to be dark and broody, and I like my crap the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Cecil likes his crap the way it is. So at one point they ask him why, at one point somebody asks Cecil why he, what he does. And he basically is like, well, since I have leisure, I can do whatever I want. And so I don't do anything.
Excuse me.
Yeah. I know, that just made me really angry.
I want to be that guy.
I want to have leisure. I want to be a gentleman of leisure.
No. We call that retired. I want to be retired.
I
want to be retired. I want to scoff at tennis.
I think we call that trust fund babies. That would be nice.
Okay.
Because retirement is like something you do after. He's just inherited a life of leisure. It's just there. And now he can do, says, being a man of leisure is a wonderful thing.
I get that. Okay, so he's not really a bad person. He just happens to be rich, and
he's kind of nasty and mean.
So am I.
You're not nasty and mean.
Watch me.
I mean, you can be. I'm sure you can be.
Okay, fine. I keep it to myself.
That's the thing. He feels entitled to his nasty meanness, but he is really entertainingly played by Daniel Day-Lewis. Like, you can't help but like him. I mean, in a weird way, even though he is insufferable. Like, he basically walks around reading. He's always
Judi Dench's. Oh, he was
that one time
he was reading Judi Dench's. Okay.
Which actually wasn't even his, it was Freddie's. Freddie got it out of the library.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, so I'm sorry, I'm totally slowing us down.
No.
So they're engaged, and again, much like how it's just a jump shot to she's engaged to Daniel Day-Lewis, all of a sudden, magically, it's like, well, I think that's supposed to be portrayed her actual affection to him as well. It's just like, oh, it just kind of happened. Here you go.
Yeah, and also, she's on her grand tour. It makes sense that you would have this. It's sort of part of the whole. They kind of describe it as part of. So what's kind of interesting is, so basically you have the young lovers that are offset by all of the middle-aged people. Yeah. And the middle-aged people sort of serve as sort of the kind of Greek chorus of the proceedings in a way. They look at it from the perspective of their middle-agedness. Mm-hmm. And alternately wanting to push them together. So some people want to push them together. Mm-hmm. Other people just kind of want to watch it happen. Other people want to, they just want to be kind of a passive audience and kind of titter about it. Other people don't want it to happen. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't seem like really anybody... I mean, the people who want them together sort of seem the strongest voice. But so they're always, so at one point, Charlotte is talking about her, she talks about how the countryside actually reminds her of the English countryside. And the novelist played by Judi Dench says, oh, you must have had a dalliance of your own there. So it's clear that like this kind of youthful love affair is charming to them because it reminds them of their own kind of youthful indiscretions, that Charlotte's unmarried, so clearly this never went anywhere. So it makes sense to me that basically like she goes to Italy because she basically after the kids they basically end up leaving in the middle of the night, never to be seen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because
also a way to reinforce just like
the romance, you have one perfect kiss.
You have one perfect kiss.
Swoon.
Now let's take you away
saw
from
murder
him.
Together.
Well, no, not even that. It's just like no way to
it really bonds you.
Well, Maggie Smith, she's just like, oh no, this is horrible. This is terrible. We should run away from this and never speak of this again.
I love how it's Maggie Smith. And
yeah.
Not like
well, no, it's just like, and we will never speak of this again. I'm just like, okay, well, I was actually okay with, but now that you mention it, that was pretty hot. I think I like it. Oh, we're leaving him. Oh, this wonderful person, this wonderful experience. And this is not going to haunt me
in this beautiful
place. This is not going to haunt me for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I wonder if they had stuck around, she would have just been like, okay, well that was kind of interesting. Yeah. Oh, he is kind of broody. Oh, that's
that's kind of annoying.
And I'm going to go home
and you never figure out if he has any money.
I don't think that's really relevant.
Well, but I mean, like, if we're going through this whole thing that actually, if you're a woman at this time, you have to make some decisions. But he lives in London. He clearly does something.
They're vacationing in
they're vacationing in Italy. You're right. He's probably fine.
So now we're, in the circumstances of, stories and love somehow.
But you're right. It has to get reinforced. It's that whole thing about vacation time, right?
Well,
it's like summer lovin'. It's like Grease. Happens so fast.
Oh.
Summer loving.
Is that an insult to Danny Zuko?
God, no.
Oh.
Same thing.
Okay.
They have this beautiful time together that is in a different place. I mean, like all things, 2 weeks of your life go by and you don't notice it. 2 weeks of your life go on vacation. You remember every moment of it for the rest of your life.
Oh
right?
My God. Georgia's summer camp in Cecil is the first day back to school.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
But clearly, like, it doesn't seem like also a very large village. So I'm not really sure if it could also be like, wow, this is pretty good.
Okay, so
like at least he's interested in art because they all kind of talk. They sort of have this sense of themselves as these sophisticates in the village.
No, I understand that. So looking into plot-wise, moving back, she's engaged. Turns out she is an incredible piano player, and it's kind of shown her skills and all this other stuff is happening.
That she plays Beethoven. They talk about how she plays Beethoven very passionately.
Yeah, there is a character, another man of the cloth who makes the observation to Cecil that you can see how she plays. I mean, she's very quiet, she's very subdued, but when she plays, you can see this passion coming through, and it just makes you wonder if she really is this person that she's portraying, or if there's something lying underneath her that's going to explode later. He's like, dude, I just asked her to marry me. So, congratulations.
He said, if only she started living as she plays, it will be interesting for all of us. And especially her, I think is the line.
Except for the guy who wants this little nice subdued thing to play the piano and make him look really good.
Exactly.
So,
and they have a really great scene where they kiss, where she goes, he says, she takes him to this beautiful spot, and he goes, she goes, I've never kissed you. And he goes, yeah, that's true. Or she says, yes, this is true. You've never kissed me. And she's like, oh, I should probably do that. And then there's all of this sort of stuff they have to contend with, like her veil, or not her veil, but her, the veil on her hat, and then the umbrella, and then his glasses. And this is the second kiss you see in the movie. And the first one is super passionate, and she tries to she basically tries to looks like she was trying to French kiss him, and he just kind of wants to give her like a little peck on the lips.
Hey, baby steps.
Yeah.
Baby
but it's
pecks.
Clear that she's like, okay. And then you see her, instead of being like really bummed about this, she's kind of like, I always think she's bummed about it, but she's kind of like, it'll be fine. It'll go like later. But then later on, you see another scene in a drawing room where he basically kisses her goodnight. And you can tell that she's like, okay, well, this is just what my life is going to be like. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be like these, chase little kisses, but it's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. We're going to have lots of money. Everything's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Oh no. Good. A progression of how their relationship is portrayed. Very sterile. Very just perfunctory.
but also just sort of, I mean, they do have similar interests. So I think it's like a very logical decision.
Uh-huh. And this is why when George and his father move into the town through a series of interesting coincidences, he's back in town, they see each other. This is what I was mentioning earlier when you were saying the murder, that came out of nowhere, and that's something that just totally blew my mind. I'm sorry, did the bath scene was that fresh in your brain the whole time?
The bath scene I remember very clearly. There was a lot of, I rewatched that bath scene many times. So at some point, he moves in, like, he basically
we're recording
comes.
that confession, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, it's like a PG-13 movie.
That is not a PG-13 movie.
Is it? I don't know what it is. It must be R.
No.
There was full frontal male nudity.
Yes.
And that, like, never happens. Yeah, ever.
Well, then, is this the whole, American versus British thing? It's just like, hey, let's all bathe together.
I've seen a lot. Like, I've seen the entire Merchant Ivory canon, basically.
Keep talking. I'm going to look up the rating of this movie.
I'm sure it's an R now that I think about it. But I saw it with my father and my mother.
You're not helping the case for the MPAA decision to make this possibly not R.
There wasn't like there was violence and sex.
There was. I saw the movie, Polina. I know what was in there. Keep talking.
So basically, there's this idyllic pond, small lake, somewhere in the woods that Lucy's brother goes to, and when the Emersons move into the town, Freddie, Lucy's brother, finds them, or like goes to the house, and the first thing that he says is, "Come and have a bath." And George says, "Oh, I like that." And the Reverend goes, "That's the best conversation opening I've ever heard. How do you do? Come have a bath." And they basically go to this place. Yeah, they go to this place. And this is like, I mean, this is a movie that takes place in Edwardian. All the clothes are very layered, very constrained. And suddenly...
Not in that scene, it wasn't.
No, suddenly everyone takes off their clothes and goes running madly into this pond, including the Reverend. And then they play this game where they start horse playing. They take away each other's clothes.
It's called Keep Away.
What?
It's called Keep Away.
Yeah. They were playing Keep Away naked, and they're running around. And then, of course, Lucy, her mom, Cecil go walking, and they're just running around naked. And, of course, there's this whole thing where everyone tries to cover Lucy up, and she's laughing, or cover her eyes, and she's laughing. So I don't think that really helped her keeping her feelings away from poor George Emerson, is seeing him in his prime, so to speak. Julian Sands, damn. So
there we go.
So there we are. So again, there's this whole thing of like the, kind of carnality kind of comes back into the whole movie.
Well, also the free-spiritedness of it. Fantastic.
Because she does say that she used to bathe there too. She tells Cecil that she did until she was found out.
And then also Cecil was saying, he just kind of like, looked down his noses, that kind of thing. But also, if you remember correctly, play tennis with my brother. No, I don't want to. Hey, you want to have a bath? Yeah, okay. That's just the free-spiritedness versus the whole like, no,
I don't even want to play tennis. And you're fully clothed when you're playing tennis.
Well, I
hope
guess so.
Unless I don't know. Who knows? These people are bathing. Like the first thing they do when they meet each other is take all their clothes. Freddie is the one I want to see. What's going to happen to Freddie? So I think. So basically, she basically keeps trying to keep Lucy the whole time tries to keep all of her feelings in check.
But because they're British, I was having a really hard time acknowledging that, because everyone's feelings were so much in check that it's just like, I guess there's something going on here.
I don't know. It was so clear, just the way they would look at each other, though.
Okay, how many times have you seen this movie?
Okay, a lot.
Well, no, that's exactly what I've seen it once. So I am watching
But I haven't
British
seen
repression.
it in 30 years.
British repression.
Also, I watch
British
a lot
repression.
of movies about British repression.
Okay, well,
that's what makes me realize that
they did a fantastic job of being Britishly repressed. It's just, again.
But you love Jane Austen. You love that 95. There was so much British repression there.
But I saw it so many damn times. I'm just like, the first time I see it, I'm just like, yeah, romance. Actually, no, the first time I read it, I was angry. Because I'm just like, no, they're not be together. Forget that. Fuck this guy. Oh, sorry. Whoops. So no, it's just it's so much repression there, and it's like, you know, if
we're cursing a lot for people talking about a movie set in Edwardian time.
Murder,
British repression,
murder. So okay, so now that this has happened, and now that I'm getting more of an insight to somebody who has seen it more than once, just okay, yes, here is your repressed guy, and here is your free spirited guy. And I see her having a little bit more conflict. The thing is, I wasn't getting that the first time around.
It's funny. I totally get that because when I saw this again, first time it was so clear to me.
Okay.
And this time, that is the part that I'm like, there's actually not as much romance in this as I remember. There are the kisses that clearly been burned into my brain, but like as like the ideal kiss. Like, this is the kiss that one day is going to happen to me. And it did once. Never kissed the guy again.
Barleyfield?
What?
Barleyfield?
There was a field.
Oh,
I don't think it was barley.
I tried to artificially create that whole kissing in the rain thing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Didn't work.
Yeah, was it cold?
No, we didn't make it because there was a song playing on the radio type of thing. No, when I say artificially creating it, I mean like there was this song playing and I love this song and it's raining. Stop the car, stop the car. And by the time we finally, got out there, the song was off. It was over.
Oh.
And I'm just like, you ruined it.
It's kind of like that kiss scene where they were going to have this romantic kiss like next to this beautiful little lake. And instead there's like a problem with the hat and the umbrella and the glasses. Yeah. Which, of course, she blames on herself, which I also found very charming. I feel like that's true, that there isn't, like, she does an excellent job, but there isn't enough stakes in this decision.
Okay, so
I do actually agree with you. Like, now having rewatched it, I didn't see enough of those stakes.
And exactly as you said, as she is reintroduced to George, is given more instances to realize her interactions with him, contrasting to her very stuffy fiance. All of a sudden, much like how bam, we kiss, bam, we're gone, bam, the whole thing is over. You have Daniel Day-Lewis, you're breaking off the engagement? And that is one of those hilarious lines that I did enjoy and got immediately. Is this because I wouldn't play tennis with your brother?
Yeah, I love it.
Good one.
The other really great thing is basically George says it. So when they move back to the village, and he to George, this is fate. This is a sign that we are actually, like, her first reaction is, oh my God, I had this perfect sort of moment in Italy, and that was great, but this is real life. And, and I'm going to have a fine life. I'm going to stay in this village. I'm going to, be with someone who's like kind of entertaining, if annoying.
We all aspire for that.
We all aspire for entertaining, if annoying. It's good. Good enough for me.
Well, after a while, even the people you love become annoying. Oh
my God, yes. If there's one thing you learn about marriage, right? But anyway, So for him, it's perfect fate. It's like, okay, well, clearly I was right. I'm going to be led back to this, and we're going to be together forever. Yeah. And he tries to convince her, and he basically says, well, you're the kind of woman, or he's the kind of man who, George says Cecil's the kind of man who only sees, he's never going to be close to anyone. He's never going to, apparently, because he will never take his clothes off to bathe. But he will never be with anyone. All he wants is a woman who is basically an object.
She's a possession.
She's a possession.
She's something to
like
collect.
Like an art piece or...
And this is where I was conflicted, because this is where I thought, oh, all right, I get it. This guy, I understand the connection to him. I love this. He doesn't love you. He only does this. He does that. Although I am having a conflict of saying, I have this opinion about your relationship, but I have ulterior motives about your relationship, so he could never love you the way I love you. But at the same time, I love you, so it's very easy for me to say that he looks at you as just an object, so I'm going to tell you this because I want you. true for myself.
Well, he's making his case. I feel like he's like,
It's
and
true,
she's like,
but it's still kind of crappy.
well, I mean, he's trying to fight for it. Like, why would he not?
I think
What's the alternative?
it's just the alternative is that you realize that you lost your. Never mind. I'm too pragmatic for
he
this.
Does at first, and then he does at 1st. I mean, he
totally grabbed her and kissed her and
yeah, I guess he doesn't at first.
yeah.
Oh yeah, and they have another really passionate. Well, because to him he's like, well, clearly all these things have brought us together. Like, I don't understand. I mean, this is every single romantic movie has this premise that basically there's the guy who's kind of wrong for you. He's probably not a terrible person.
Maybe that's why I had such a hard time growing up. Go ahead.
But this is like
I never had the wrong guy.
Only you. That's it.
No,
but only you had the same thing.
Well, no, I'm not saying that it's
same.
not. Of course, there has to be some sort of conflict. But as the young me would say, I think that's what I was having. Oh no, 2 men are in love with you. Oh no,
that's terrible.
That's
well, and so, but I think that it's just scary. I mean, she's like, these feelings she has for him are so overwhelming. They're really frightening to her. Okay. And I think that's where this fear that she's like, I am not in control of myself.
Okay.
When I'm around this person, I do things that are improper. And in fact, after she kisses him and breaks off the engagement to Cecil, which is a hysterical scene because she basically very calmly breaks off the engagement to Cecil.
Yeah.
And then. But basically, when he's like, why? She uses all of George's things.
Like beat for beat.
Beat for beat. Like, she says exactly the same thing. And she's like, well, words to that effect. And it's like, you used his exact words.
And what didn't help is that he's just like, well, I just understand that. What? You think there's somebody else? I'm like, he didn't say that. Way to show your hand. Because there's not someone else.
Oh, there's no one else. There couldn't possibly be anyone else. And
Why
then
is
she
it
goes,
when a woman breaks off an engagement, there must be because... I'm like...
No, like, he never said that. He's just like, he's a little bummed. And the other thing is, he doesn't even really argue with her. Yeah. Like, he's not happy, and you see him like slowly put on his shoes, but he's not devastated.
No, and that's why I thought it was, again, it was the prim and proper.
Why did he have his shoes off? That was the other thing. I was like, this makes no sense.
Oh my God, he was trying so hard to be intimate with her. Oh, he took his shoes off.
He was still wearing socks, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then she decides she's going to go off to Greece with these 2 elderly maiden women.
The Adamses.
And the Allens.
Oh, the Allens.
Oh wait, the Miss Allens.
The Miss Allens.
Miss Allens. I think they're sisters.
Yeah. She met them in Italy.
Yeah, she met them in the same pension, and then
because run away from your feelings.
Yeah. And that's when and all these people, like, she keeps. Like, there's all the scenes start with, like, Lucy lies to this person, Lucy lies to this person, and essentially she's lying to herself.
Yes.
That's the takeaway. Anyway, and then at the end, she finally realizes that this is mainly because she talks to George's father, who's
and they're moving out of the area.
They're moving. He's never going to see her. And the reason that he's moving is basically because he's like, I can't stand to be anywhere that reminds me of her.
Yep.
And in talking to her, in talking to the father, she finally breaks down and realizes that she is in love with him, and that it's only her fear that is keeping them apart. The fear of this, these feelings that kind of threaten to overwhelm her. And then the next scene you have is you see them in a letter that she's writing, and they're in the same pension as they were before, and she says, oh, it's filled with all the same people.
It's filled with the Lucy and a Charlotte, and the Mrs. Allens, and
and a novelist,
and the Judi Dench. Yeah.
And so it's basically that she had this experience that to her was this magical only experience. And she turns to and they're arguing about having the Charlotte, the sort of later Charlotte and Lucy are arguing about the fact that are whining about the fact they didn't get a room with a view,
and paralleling to when she was there with Charlotte in the beginning of the movie, instead of it being George and his father talking about these things are inconsequential to us, they have a room with a view, but of course they're together. She is there with George. They have They're together. They're that married happy.
They're very happily married. And they're reading letters. They're reading a letter to each other while making out with this beautiful view of Venice. Because what I loved, I thought the thing I forgot about this movie is how like funny it is about sort of social mores. The whole thing with them arguing about being so peevish about the fact that they didn't have a view. Mm-hmm. But now they can really, like, when she actually gets the room with a view in her whole life, she's not sitting in the window taking advantage of it.
Right. Now
she's sitting there enjoying the view. Uh-huh.
He's also enjoying the view.
Oh, yeah.
Of her cleavage.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of it's rather risque. That makeout scene's pretty hot. There's only 3 times that people make out in this movie.
I was about to say, for the movie that has male frontal nudity, you're saying the makeout scene was the little.
And there's actually no female frontal nudity of any kind.
Right. Well, that's my thing. I'm like, you're calling that makeout scene risque?
I know.
Murder.
There's a murder. Maybe not risque, but it's just very like passionate. Because I was watching it in a coffee shop, so I was like, whoa. And
so only risque because someone could have watched you watching it.
Yeah. They were just whatever they were making out. There was no,
No,
anyway.
It's not that bad.
But it's very romantic. It's a beautiful, very romantic scene, actually, of like them, these, 2 beautiful people making out with Venice in the background. I don't know. So I think that's what got me, this movie. Because I think it's like, I think this was at a time, it's like when you're starting to have romantic feelings, they are really scary. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And so that's I think what I loved about this movie. Plus, like, I was obsessed with living in that time. Like, I just thought it was, because everything was so gorgeous. And
plus, as a female, you're not being tied down to your responsibilities because she's able to walk away. So it's kind of the best of all scenarios. Because I think about that. What would it be like to live in those times? And then I think about all of my rights being taken away from me.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a ridiculous fantasy because obviously I wouldn't want to live in that times, which is what Austenland's about. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it is about how ridiculous it is to have a fantasy of living in those times. But I was also 15, and I remember walking out of this movie, and I was wearing, like, I had a white long skirt, because that was, like, kind of in at the time, as these kind of yoke waist skirts, which are very similar to what they wore. And, like, I was wearing a dress, and I just was like, I want to be wearing a beautiful white dress and walking through a field of barley dotted with poppies and have this incredibly handsome man wearing a linen suit, like, the linen suit really played into this fantasy, too.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty specific.
Yeah, well.
I'm getting hives just thinking about it.
Linen?
No, just the field and
the field of barley,
skirt, and the scratchy.
Well, not in the spring.
Okay.
In the summer when they're not flowering, and then you wouldn't have. But yeah, but in reality, if I was in that field of poppies, I probably would have hay fever. And but that's what this movie ruined me for is a man in a white linen shirt is just catnip.
So you mentioned it was the scene in the pre-postcard throwing into the thing. Okay, so he fell in love after this incident with her. When do you think she fell in love with him?
Oh, I think it was the kiss.
In the field.
The first kiss.
The first kiss in the field.
Because she kissed back, man.
I didn't think so. Oh, I wasn't really staring at it. I think I was too busy realizing what just happened.
I wanted to look at it because I'm like, this is a kiss that has been in my head for 30 for around 30 years.
Okay. So it was that moment with her, but his was before.
I think it might have been before because she was kind of looking at him when they first.
Okay.
Like, it might have been that she had a crush on him before, but
I think I agree with you. It's in talking about this that I think that you're right. It's when he was, when he said his life had changed. I didn't really process that, but talking about it, I agree with you. I think that's when he fell in love with her. Kiss, I agree. That's probably when she fell in love with him. Are they going to live happily ever after?
I think so. But I feel like in a weird way, I don't have enough information. Like, I mean, I think one thing that he has said, I mean, there's sort of this kind of idea of this novel about what it's about is people moving, out of, the Freddie and George and to some extent father represent the new kind of man. It's at the time the modern man who is not as tied down to convention, um, is freer, is reading a lot of romantic poetry, is they go through his books and they make all these jokes about reading Byron, like, oh, you must be reading some Byron.
Right. Do you mean does that open yourself to think that he's more likely to stray?
No, it opens me to think that he is more likely to see her as they're more likely to have a life where they're both equals.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I definitely thought that leaving there. I just thought
it would have been in a previous generation.
Oh, okay. Well, just based on the information you do have, then do you think they're going to go the distance?
I think so. I think so because I think that they are. I mean, they're clearly just. I mean, they're newlyweds, right? And they're delighted by each other, but we actually don't really learn that much about him. Mm-hmm. But he clearly really sees her, and I think, and she clearly, I mean, the whole thing is she's, they talk about how when she's apart from him, that basically she's lost her, I don't know, her sort of like excitement and the light in her eyes and all this. And so I think he really sees the light in her eyes, but it's hard to know sort of logistically if they'll go distance because you just don't know, like, what kind of life are they going to lead? Because I don't know what he does. They're probably going to live in London, obviously, because that's where he's living. But I have no idea when they're going to get ground down by, the vagaries of sort of logistical life. And that's what I mean by not having enough. I want to believe in them just because they're beautiful,
I was going to say, I'd like
people.
to speak to young Polina now.
Yes.
What do you think is going to happen?
Young Polina did not think about any of these things. And young Polina just wanted to sit in Venice with the room with a view and go to galleries and make out with Julian Sands.
Well, that's okay then. And
young me did not know how to think about these things.
Okay, fine. Young me said you would not know how to think about these things, but you were just saying I would like to think that they would. We're going to go with that. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I'm going to go with that. So how did you like this movie?
It was very interesting. Like I said, once I got past the whiplash of going from action superstar blockbuster to this, no, it was very good. Very interesting. I'm sure I'd get a lot more out of it the second go around. It's kind of like a movie where you're trying really hard to just make sure you're understanding what's happening. You're not getting the nuances. But no, it's very good. I see why it did as well as it did, in terms of reviews. And entertaining, very nice. Could have gone without the full frontal. That was something I was not anticipating it. Okay, I have to prepare myself for these things, in that I don't want to watch these things.
Why?
Because there was vicar ass.
Okay, the vicar ass I could have done without. I will say, somehow I totally edited out the whole vicar thing, but I love the vicar thing because one thing that vicar is, he's just such an entertaining character because he's kind of, he's the sort of commentary of the whole thing. Well, he's such an entertaining character, but
I'm sorry,
it was
Polina.
Middle-aged. It did kind of ruin the two young. Okay. Yeah, the vicar thing. Okay, I get that.
Well,
no, you're right.
Well, also remember my context thing. You want to know who I know the vicar from? Is Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls.
Oh, I never saw that.
Well, you don't have to see that. It's a movie called Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls.
Oh.
It doesn't make it.
Well, it's funny because the whole vicar thing is like, and it's. I mean, I thought, like, to me watching it now, I think in my mind, when watching it then, I was probably really embarrassed, but I was like editing out the vicar, or he's reverend. I guess he's a reverend.
Man of the cloth.
Yeah, man of the cloth. But it was funny because it is this scene of like youthful kind of folly, and then there's the kind of bumbling middle-aged man in the middle of the youthful folly. That's kind of how I took it this time. But
good
that it was kind of it was like meant to be a joke, because I feel like this movie, I want to say for the record, it has I think I remember this movie as being much more serious than it is in watching it. Like, it's much funnier. The whole thing about them like complaining about the view and having this whole long drama about how they basically need to work because they switch rooms with the father because they don't have a view. Like Lucy and Charlotte don't have a view, but then he does. But George and his father do, and they're perfectly happy to just switch, but everyone is so worried about doing it wrong that they make it into like someone has to ask to switch rooms instead of like, oh wow, that would be so nice of you. I've never been to to Venice, and I really want to view. Mm-hmm. And at one point, Charlotte and Lucy are talking, and Charlotte, who is kind of a ridiculous character, says, I shall never forgive myself. And Lucy says, you always say that, Charlotte, but you always do forgive yourself.
Yeah, and that's a perfect...
It's a great line.
No, it's a perfect interpretation of that character itself. Yeah. She's so antsy, but only antsy for her own self-interest.
Yeah. And she always makes this show of being like for other people, but it's all always for herself. So it's just kind of a funny little thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm going to say. Yeah. Them at the end, it's beautiful, but it's also connected. It's not just a, running out of a church, out of your one wedding to go with someone else who's screaming your name. So I think they have a better chance. I'm like you, where I don't think I have as much information, but if I'm going to give that a basic, how well does a relationship last, I'm going to give them a coin flip. And in my mental coin flip, they make it.
I think, I'm going to agree.
Yeah, because they get to live a life of leisure. I want to go.
That's the other thing. Like, what's so terrible about their life? They're making out in friggin' Florence. Like, the very least they'll have that.
To romance.
To romance.
There it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I highly recommend this movie, even rewatching it. But, I don't know. You have to have some patience with the pacing.
And beware the murder in full frontal.
Rated R. Or enjoy it.
Rated R.
Rated R?
Rated R.
All right. Goodbye. See you next time.
Thanks. Hey, Polina and I would love to hear from you. Tweet us at HEAMCast or email us at contact@heamcast.com. Thanks for listening.